Hello friends, this is Dr. Jitendra Dave. I'm an assistant professor in geology at Baudin Government Science College, Junagadh. The college is affiliated with Bhakta Kavi Narasimha Mehta University, which is situated in the state of Gujarat. As a part of an assignment of ongoing refresher course in research writing and academic integrity at MMTC TTC Kumaon University in Nainital, I'm going to talk about sampling for empirical studies. In previous few sessions during this for last 6 or 7 days of a refresher course, some resource persons already touched upon the importance of sampling. Sorry, but in this short video, I'll try to talk in little detail about sampling and the importance of sampling and different types of sampling techniques. Uh, what is sampling? So if a researcher covers a larger area or a vast population, one cannot gather information on all the areas or all the individuals, but a small part of selected individuals or objects are being studied or the focus, which we call it sample. So whole group of objects or individuals in this case is the population, known as the also known as the target population, and the selected small group of objects or individuals, which we call it sample, and sometimes we also call it as an study population. Uh, I also emphasize that the term population, when we use it, it comes to our mind that we are talking about biological population, but it's not the case when we are talking about the sampling. Here, the population means the whole uh, possible collection of all items or individuals for which we are going to draw an inference out of it. And when we are doing a research study, we should consider sample to be representative. So when we draw a sample from the population, it gives inference which can apply to the entire population. And for that, we have to take care that when we do sampling or when we collect the sample, the error is minimal and we are not doing any substitutions or it's not incomplete. And the sampling, the term sampling means a systematic or the proper way of collecting samples from the population. So the selection of a sample population from target population is called the sampling method. Here in this graphic, we can see that there is a population which is like, all different kinds of individuals or objects. And from that, we are selecting a random group of individuals or objects, which are fewer than the target population. It's like few selected individuals or objects. And we do statistical analysis. We collect observations, data, measurements, and then we do the statistics, and that statistics or the sample average implies to the population, and that the when it is comparable with population average, we call it population parameter. But we cannot directly discern any idea about population looking at the population. We have to draw a smaller portion of the sample. So how we draw a sample from the population? So there is a strategy, sampling strategy. And there are two kinds of strategy. One is called the probability sampling, and another is called is non-probability sampling. Now, in probability sampling, every member of the population has a chance of being selected. So it's not, neither it's a bias or neither it's an effort from the person. It's like, any member from the or the any individual or any object from the target population or the target group of objects has an equal chance of being selected. So that is generally used in quantitative research. And if you want to produce the results which are like representative of the whole population, this is the best sampling strategy to choose. Then we talk about the non-probability sampling. Generally, when a researcher starts a research and want to just to get a quick idea of the population, or person does not have time, or many times we are doing a qualitative research, this is being non-probability sampling is being selected, because probability sampling requires far more efforts and resources. Non-probability sampling strategy is relatively less intensive, and it is being used for exploratory analysis in many cases and sometimes during qualitative research. So it gives you an idea of how population behaves. So the how population here, again, I would say population means the group of objects or group of individuals, is giving the parameter. It's easier, it's cheaper, but since it's not, the randomness is not ensured, there are chances of sampling bias. And although there are chances of bias, one can be careful to minimize the chances of being biased and can take the representative portion of the population as much as possible. It is both type of sampling strategies. We'll talk one by one. First, we'll talk about probability sampling, and then we'll talk about non-probability sampling. So, what do we mean by probability? What are the probability sampling methods? So, first is simple random sampling. Second is stratified sampling. Third is systematic sampling, and fourth one is cluster sampling. Uh, while in case of non-probability sampling, we have the convenience sampling, purpose sampling, snowball sampling. There are a couple of others also, but we'll try to cover the few in this slide. So, what is simple random sampling? So, every individual in a population has an equal chance of being selected. So, it includes the entire population. So, in simple random sampling, we target for a smaller portion of the larger population without any bias. Now, how do we do that? From a larger population to a smaller group of individuals or objects, we have to use a random number generator, which we can do it in many softwares and even in Excel also. And there are some other techniques also to avoid being biased when we select sample from the population. You can see in this the graphics above also that, like, there are few individuals are marked. They are like randomly selected. So there are different colors, but when we pick up the sample, there is no bias involved. However, we know that population individuals are not randomly located in a population, or the objects are not arranged in a random manner. So there are some patterns, sometimes in male, female in his population, or different socioeconomic groups, so some regional thing, north, west, south, east. In case of objects also, let's say trees, there are some species of trees or some height of the trees. So in nature, the things are not randomly arranged. So there is some pattern, and to understanding that pattern, we select object or individual from randomly from each pattern. That's called the stratified sampling. It allows us to draw more precise conclusion, because sometimes some stratified or the some individuals or the objects in a pattern are smaller in number, and some patterns are bigger with bigger individuals. So when we do random selection, so it has a bias because you get more individuals from X pattern and fewer individuals from Y pattern. So in this case, when we are doing stratified sampling, we are selecting individuals randomly from a particular group or a particular pattern. As shown in this graphic, you can see, like, the objects are according to the topography, according to landscape, according to their gender, or the socio-economic group, or their residential origin, or whatever. So that's called the stratified sampling, which is the part of the random sampling. But here, like, randomness is identified. Uh, Randomness is assured based on how the individuals are arranged in a population. So systematic sampling is relatively simpler, because here, like, you don't need to look at the different strata or different pattern or something, but every individual is chosen at a regular interval. So here no random number is generated, no strata is identified, uh, not any designing pattern in the population. It's like, just skipping a fixed interval and selecting the individuals. Here we have to make sure that there is no hidden pattern in the population, as we discussed in stratified sampling. Cluster sampling is another sampling strategy. Here, like, some individuals are always arranged in a group. So rather than identifying individuals, we identify a group or a cluster, and then we possibly select each and every individual of that cluster for the sampling. If the cluster is larger, we again go for the randomization, and we select the randomly select individuals from that small cluster. When we do again randomization into the random selection, it's the entire process is called the multi-stage sampling. Now we'll talk a little about non-probability sampling techniques. The one is the haphazard. So there is a difference between randomness and haphazard. So what we discuss, which is it's random, but we do it in a proper way without involving any bias, it's called the random sampling. Here, like, we'll talk about the haphazard. Sometimes what happens, like, some researcher wants to quickly come to some understanding of a population. So based on the convenience, we select the object rather than going for the any robust strategy. We just go collect information from whatever available in object or in first person or the first object in the field. That's called the haphazard sampling. It has a sampling bias also, and sometimes it introduces the selection bias. Both biases are we have to minimize, but this haphazard sampling has chances of very high chances of having both kind of volunteer response sampling. We all know that, like, there are emails with requests for survey forms, survey monkey and Google form and all these things. So here researcher does not have any hold. It throws all these survey forms to huge audience, and then the respondent selects to response. So in this case, it's not the researcher who is selecting the object, but objects, they are voluntarily responding. That's why it's called the voluntary response sampling. It has some somewhat bias, because, like, some people want to respond. So any mail you get, you want to respond to it, and some people, like, they are important people, but they do not want to respond to this thing. Another interesting sampling technique is the purposive or the judgmental sampling. Here, like, sometimes researcher knows where exactly to ask, who exactly to meet, and get the answers. So here, like, judgment of researcher is involved. So rather going for a randomization or systematic sampling, we already know that, okay, this out of 10 people, I should go to these 3 people and to ask questions. So this is called the purposive or judgmental sampling, which is largely used in qualitative research, not in another technique is like snowball sampling. How do we do this? Like, we already sometimes, like, some interesting studies involve the questions and answers where, like, people, you don't know who are your target. So you figure out the first person, then first person will give you the address of 3 others, and 3 others will give you another 3 others, and that's how your sampling increases step by step. So that's called the, since it creates a snowball effect, like, rolling and becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. That's why we call it a snowball sampling. In qualitative sampling, especially when we are our population is human population, we do quota sampling, because we know, like, we want to have 10. When our sample is 100, out of 100 we want to have 50 males, 50 females. In female, we want to have 10 in this age group, and 10 in this age group, and 10 in this age group. That's called the quota sampling. At last, let's slightly touch upon the accuracy and precision issue in conducting research. uh, Everybody wants to be accurate, everybody wants to be precise in findings and in inference. And there are 3 scenarios which are I have shown through a arrow and bullseye. In first graphic, it's accurate but not precise. So arrows are going in all directions. And second, the arrows are in one places but in a there is a bias, it's away from the bullseye. And in third, all the arrows are very close and up into the bullseye. So what does it mean? That in the first case, the precision is less. So you have to refine your sampling technique, sampling strategy to get the more closer samples. In case of second graphic, you have to be careful about selecting your tool to get the data, because there is something wrong with the data collection approach, and that's why your error is less, your sampling strategy is right, but tool is wrong. And in third case, when you have both in place, in rightly, appropriately selected, you get the accurate and precise finding. So that's it from my end. Thank you.